Officer Ryan Cole was patrolling the snowy streets of Snowfield when his headlights caught something strange. A small cardboard box left beneath the flickering bus stop light. Inside, shivering and half-frozen, was a German Shepherd puppy with a note tied to his neck that read, "Please give him a chance." Ryan had seen many things in his years on the force, crime, loss, even death, but nothing prepared him for the way that little dog looked at him, as if begging for life itself. What neither of them knew was that this chance encounter would change the hearts of an entire town. What happened next will make you cry and believe in kindness again. Before we start, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Snowfield, Wyoming. Midnight under a restless sky. The kind of night when snow falls not softly but with weight, pressing the town beneath its silence. Wind howled down Main Street, curling around the dim lampposts, scattering snow in shimmering spirals. Most of Snowfield slept behind frosted windows, heaters humming. But one man was still out there, headlights cutting through the storm like small, stubborn beacons. Officer Ryan Cole, 35 years old, sat alone in his patrol SUV, one hand on the steering wheel, the other wrapped around a metal thermos. He had the steady posture of a man used to long nights, broad shoulders beneath a thick navy winter sheriff's jacket, a silver badge catching faint light from the dashboard. His short, dark brown hair, streaked with silver at the sides, was neatly trimmed, his clean-shaven face framed by eyes the color of cold steel. He'd once been called one of Snowfield's finest, sharp, dependable, the officer who never missed a shift. But ever since the accident that took his wife 3 winters ago, Ryan had lived more like a ghost patrolling a graveyard. The radio hissed faintly with static, no dispatches tonight. Snowfield was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt heavy, not peaceful. He reached over and turned the dial down, letting the hum of the heater fill the silence. Outside, flakes drifted in hypnotic motion. He took a sip of lukewarm coffee, eyes scanning the road automatically. Habit, routine, survival. Then, something strange flickered in his headlights. At the far edge of the road, by the bus stop near Maple Avenue, a small shape sat beneath the streetlight. Just a cardboard box, half collapsed under snow. Ryan would have driven past if not for the faint movement inside it, a tremor that didn't belong to the wind. He slowed, curiosity prickling through fatigue. The SUV's tires crunched to a stop, engine rumbling in the stillness. Ryan pulled his gloves tighter, stepped out into the storm, and felt the bite of wind cut across his face. The snow came sideways, swirling under the orange bus stoplight. The box sat in its glow, edges softened by frost. As Ryan approached, the faintest sound reached him, a whimper, barely audible. He crouched, brushing snow away with one gloved hand. Inside, curled into itself, was a tiny German Shepherd puppy, no more than 3 months old. Its fur was soaked, clumped in icy strands. Its little body shivered uncontrollably. Around its neck was a bit of frayed string holding a paper note, soaked but still legible. Ryan's heart clenched as he leaned closer. The handwriting was uneven, hurried, maybe written by a child. Please give him a chance. For a long moment, Ryan couldn't move. The wind whistled through the empty street. A traffic light flicked from green to yellow to red, though no cars passed. "Hey there, little guy," he murmured finally, his voice softened by something he hadn't felt in years. "Where's your owner, huh?" The puppy raised his head weakly, meeting Ryan's gaze with eyes so deep and desperate that it silenced every thought. It didn't bark, didn't struggle. It simply looked up, as if trusting him completely. Ryan exhaled slowly, then slid his arms around the fragile body. The puppy was lighter than it should have been, ribs pressing under wet fur. When Ryan lifted him, the pup pressed its face into his chest with a faint sigh. "Okay," Ryan whispered. "You're coming with me." He opened his jacket, tucked the trembling creature inside, and felt its small heartbeat flutter against his ribs. The cold bit at his ears as he walked back to the car, snow creaking beneath each step. Once inside, he started the engine and turned the heat up high. The interior fogged instantly. The puppy stirred, blinking up with glazed brown eyes. Ryan removed one glove and stroked the damp fur gently. "You're tougher than you look," he said. "You deserve a name." He thought for a moment, staring at the fragile life in his arms. "How about Max?" The puppy gave a tiny, tired huff, like agreement. Ryan smiled despite himself. "Max, it is." He placed Max on the passenger seat, wrapped in an emergency blanket. The heater roared, thawing the chill from both of them. For a minute, Ryan just sat there, staring out through the fogged windshield as snow smeared across the glass. He wasn't supposed to get attached, not to strays, not to anyone. But something about that note, "Please give him a chance," hit deeper than he expected. Maybe because it sounded like something his wife would have written. He saw flashes again, metal twisting, flames licking through snow, her hand slipping from his. He had promised himself he wouldn't feel again, wouldn't hope again. But now a shivering puppy sat beside him, trusting him to fix everything. "All right, Max," he said quietly. "Let's get you warm." He reached over, feeling the small body's warmth return little by little. The storm outside thickened, white walls closing in around the SUV. Ryan turned on the siren lights, not for emergency, but for safety, and pulled onto the road. The drive through town was slow. Storefronts passed in streaks of gray and gold. Christmas lights still hung in some windows, blinking faintly under layers of snow. The whole world seemed to be asleep, unaware of the tiny heartbeat that had just reawakened something human in the man behind the wheel. As he drove, Max shifted under the blanket, one paw stretching out to touch Ryan's arm. That simple gesture broke through the last layer of ice around his heart. "You're gonna make it, buddy," Ryan murmured, eyes fixed on the endless white ahead. "I promise." The heater hummed softly. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, two living souls shared warmth against the dark. By the time he reached the outskirts of town, his headlights reflected off the sign for Snowfield Veterinary Clinic. The neon glow was faint in the storm, but it was there, hope in blue light. Ryan looked over at Max, who was now fast asleep, chest rising and falling evenly. He smiled faintly. "Almost there, kid." He parked under the clinic awning, engine idling, and leaned back in his seat. The snow hammered against the windshield, relentless. Ryan rested one hand on the steering wheel, the other gently over Max's blanket. He didn't get out right away. For once, he wasn't in a hurry. He just sat there, listening to the storm outside and the quiet breathing beside him. For the first time in 3 years, Officer Ryan Cole didn't feel like he was alone in the world. Outside, the blizzard continued. But inside that patrol car, beneath the hum of the heater, something had shifted. Something small and warm that might, if he let it, change everything. The sky was paling when Ryan finally turned off the engine. The storm had quieted to a whisper, and dawn crept across Snowfield in a thin silver haze. Snow still fell, but softly now, flakes drifting down like the ashes of a dying fire. Inside the patrol SUV, the air was warm, fogged with breath and the hum of the heater. Max slept on the passenger seat, wrapped tightly in the fleece blanket. His breathing had steadied, small and rhythmic, but his body was still weak. Ryan kept one hand resting gently on the bundle, feeling that faint rise and fall. Proof of life, fragile yet stubborn. He sat there for a long time, staring out at the quiet town. The neon blue of the Snowfield Veterinary Clinic sign shimmered faintly through the veil of falling snow just a block ahead. After a few seconds of stillness, he whispered, "All right, kid, let's get you some help." Ryan opened the door. The cold hit him like a wall, slicing through his uniform despite the heavy jacket. He pulled the blanket tighter around Max and stepped out, boots crunching against the frost. The snow-covered ground glowed pale under the first light of morning, each step sinking deep with a muffled sound. The clinic looked small and simple, white siding, an old oak door, and windows glowing with the soft light of early morning. A hand-painted sign on the glass read, "Snowfield Veterinary Care, Emergencies Welcome." He climbed the short steps, balancing Max in one arm, and pushed open the door. A bell chimed gently. Warmth hit him instantly, carrying the clean scent of antiseptic and pine wood. The space was quiet except for a soft, classical tune playing somewhere in the back room. Rows of photos lined the walls, rescued pets, smiling families, and the handwritten words, "Thank you, Dr. Jensen." Footsteps approached. A woman stepped through the doorway, tightening the tie on her white coat as she came into view. Dr. Maya Jensen, early 30s, had the composed look of someone who had seen too many emergencies to panic anymore. Her chestnut brown hair was tied in a loose bun, a few strands brushing against her cheek. She wore dark jeans, winter boots dusted with snow, and a gray turtleneck beneath the coat. Her eyes, hazel, sharp, and steady, met Ryan's immediately. "You're here early," she said, her tone brisk but not unkind. "Emergency?" Ryan nodded, stepping forward. "Found him last night, at the Maple bus stop. Someone left him in a cardboard box." Her brows lifted slightly. "In this weather?" He nodded again and carefully unwrapped the blanket. Maya's expression softened as she saw the small, trembling form inside. "Oh, you poor thing," she murmured, instantly shifting into the calm, efficient rhythm of a professional. "Put him here, on the table." Ryan laid Max down, the puppy twitching faintly as the sudden brightness touched his face. Maya pulled on latex gloves and began examining him, her movements quick and sure. "He's underweight," she said, almost to herself. "Dehydrated. Fur's matted. And these bruises—" She parted the fur gently near the neck, frowning. "That's a rope mark. Someone tied him up." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Can he make it?" Maya didn't answer right away. She adjusted the stethoscope against Max's chest, listening. The faint heartbeat fluttered like wings. After a long moment, she nodded. "He's weak. But yes, he's a fighter." "Good," Ryan said softly. "That's why I named him Max." Her eyes flicked up to his face, a touch of surprise in them. "You already named him?" "Didn't seem right to keep calling him Kid," he said with a faint smile. Maya studied him for a second longer before turning away to prepare an IV drip. "People name things they care about," she said quietly. Ryan said nothing. He just watched her work, her hands moving with careful precision, her brow furrowed in focus. For a moment, he wondered what kind of person spent their life patching up broken animals in a mountain town where not many thanked her for it. Maya finished the IV setup and inserted the small needle gently into Max's paw. The puppy whimpered once, then went still. "He needs warmth, fluids, and rest. The good news is, he's young. He'll bounce back if we're lucky." "Then I'll stay," Ryan said simply. Maya turned to him, crossing her arms. "That's not necessary. He's safe here. You should get some rest." Ryan's eyes didn't move from the table. "I'll stay." There was something in his voice, steady but weighted, that made her stop arguing. She sighed, gesturing toward a small chair near the heater. "Suit yourself, but if you fall asleep there, I'm not waking you." He gave a small smile. "Wouldn't be the first time." As Maya moved to wash her hands, Ryan looked around the room. A photograph on the counter caught his eye, a younger Maya standing beside an older man in a worn fishing jacket. Both were smiling broadly, arms around each other. In the corner, faded but still readable, was a caption written in pen. "Me and Dad, 2004. He spoke quietly. "Your father?" Maya froze for a second before nodding. "Yeah, he was a vet, too. Died years ago." "I'm sorry," Ryan said. Her voice was even, but there was a small tremor in it. "Police chase on the interstate. Wrong place, wrong time." She dried her hands and turned to face him. "That's why I came here. Needed quiet. Needed distance." Ryan understood that kind of pain too well, the kind that hollowed out years of your life without asking permission. He nodded slightly. "Sometimes quiet helps. Sometimes it doesn't." She gave a faint, almost ironic smile. "You sound like someone who'd know." "I do." His eyes dropped back to Max, whose breathing had evened out under the soft light. "Lost my wife in a car crash 3 years ago, winter like this." Maya's face softened, the walls she'd built faltering. "I'm sorry," she said again, and this time she meant it. "Don't be," he said quietly. "Just make sure this one gets another shot." She nodded. "I will." For a while, neither spoke. The heater hummed, the clock ticked. Outside, light slowly filled the world, glinting off the snow-laden trees. Ryan sat in the chair, exhaustion pulling at him, but he refused to close his eyes. Every few minutes, he'd reach over to rest a hand on Max's back, feeling the warmth returning. Maya glanced at him from across the room. There was something quietly disarming about the way this hardened-looking officer touched the trembling pup, as though the act itself held the last thread of his own healing. After some time, she approached again, voice low. "He's stabilizing. I'll keep him here for the day. You can check on him later." Ryan looked up, the corners of his mouth tightening. "You'll call if anything changes?" "I will," she said. Then, after a short pause, "You're a good man, Officer Cole. Most people would have driven past." Ryan stood slowly, pulling on his gloves. "Maybe," he said, glancing once more at the table, "but I've seen what happens when you don't stop." Maya didn't reply, but her eyes followed him as he walked toward the door. Snowlight poured through the glass, wrapping him in a pale glow as he paused and looked back once more. "Thank you, Doctor," he said. She gave a small nod. "Just doing my job." When the door closed behind him, Maya looked back at Max. The puppy stirred slightly, then rolled toward the edge of the blanket, letting out a quiet sigh. She smiled to herself without meaning to. "Whoever you are, little one," she murmured, "you found the right man." Outside, the snow had stopped entirely. The morning sun spread across Snowfield, touching every rooftop with gold. Somewhere beyond the clinic, a patrol car drove down the quiet road, its tire tracks carving two clean lines through the endless white. When Ryan returned to the clinic that afternoon, the storm had melted into quiet. Snow lay piled against the curbs, soft and glittering under the weak winter sun. The town of Snowfield looked calmer than it had the night before. Storefronts reopening, kids dragging sleds down the sidewalks, and the faint sound of laughter echoing between frosted rooftops. But for Ryan, the day still felt suspended in that gray space between past and present, between duty and something more fragile, something beginning to thaw inside him. Inside Snowfield Veterinary Clinic, the air was warm, scented faintly with antiseptic and coffee. Dr. Maya Jensen looked up from her desk as the bell chimed above the door. She wore a heavy wool sweater under her lab coat, sleeves rolled up to her elbows. Her brown hair was tied loosely this time, a few strands escaping to frame her face. When she smiled, it was small and careful, like a door opening just a little. "He's awake," she said, setting her pen down, "and making quite the racket back there." Ryan's lips curved faintly. "That's a good sign, I hope." "Depends who you ask." Maya pushed off from the counter and nodded toward the back room. "Come on, Officer Cole. He's been waiting." In the exam room, Max sat alert on the table, tail thumping, eyes bright with recognition. His fur was brushed smooth, his small body looking stronger already. The IV line had been removed, replaced with a light bandage. When Ryan stepped closer, Max yipped and wriggled toward him, nose pressed into his palm before Ryan could even speak. "Yeah, I missed you too, kid," Ryan said softly. Maya leaned against the doorframe, watching the scene. "He's a tough one. A little stubborn, a lot hungry, but he'll make it." Ryan looked down at the dog, running a gloved hand along his head. Guess he just needed someone to believe that. For a moment their eyes met, and Maya's usual reserve softened. "He'll need food every few hours, warmth, and no rough playing for a while. I'm trusting you to keep him out of trouble." Ryan gave a mock salute. "Yes, ma'am." She smiled despite herself. "You're lucky. He likes you. Most dogs his age bite first and trust later." "Maybe we're both learning," he said quietly. Maya hesitated, then reached for a small brown bottle on the counter. "Pain meds," she said, handing it to him, "just in case. Oh, and bring him back in 3 days for a checkup." Ryan took the bottle and nodded. "I'll do that." Maya paused again. Her tone softened. "You're doing a good thing, Officer Cole. Not many would have stopped that night." He held her gaze for a moment, the faint hum of the heater filling the silence. "I didn't stop because I'm good," he said. "I stopped because I couldn't drive past something broken again." Maya blinked, caught off guard by the honesty in his voice. She looked away first, pretending to adjust the light switch. "Take care of him," she said quietly. "I will." Ryan carried Max carefully to the SUV. The air outside was colder now, the sky turning gold behind the mountains. Max snuggled against his chest, warm and trusting, while Ryan started the engine. Through the windshield, he could still see Maya's silhouette in the clinic doorway, one hand resting against the frame. She didn't wave, but her small nod was enough. As the SUV pulled onto the road, Ryan glanced at the dog resting in his lap. "All right, partner," he murmured. "Let's get you home." The drive through Snowfield was slow, the sun dipping low behind the pine ridges. Houses stood dusted in snow like they'd been carved from sugar. Max lay curled on the passenger seat, blinking sleepily, his small chest rising and falling in rhythm with the hum of the engine. Ryan watched the road in silence, but part of him kept glancing at that small bundle of life beside him, as if afraid it might disappear when he wasn't looking. He turned down Maple Ridge Lane, where his home waited at the edge of the woods. The old cedar cabin looked smaller than he remembered, its roof buried under snow, smoke, chimney, long, cold. He parked in the driveway, engine idling, staring at the front porch for a few seconds before speaking quietly. "All right, kid. Welcome to my mess." He opened the door, stepping into air sharp enough to sting. Snow crunched under his boots as he walked up to the porch, Max tucked in his arms beneath the blanket. Inside, the house was silent except for the creak of the wooden floor and the faint whistle of wind through the eaves. The smell of pine and dust lingered. He flipped on a lamp. The yellow glow spread softly across framed photographs and old furniture. One picture stopped him in his tracks. His wife, Laura, standing on the porch in summer sunlight, holding a mug of coffee, laughing at something behind the camera. Her blonde hair glowed like wheat, her eyes full of mischief. Ryan's throat tightened. "Hey, Laura," he whispered. "Guess we've got a new roommate." He set Max down near the stone fireplace, which still held cold ashes from years past. Kneeling, he stacked fresh logs and struck a match. The flame took slowly, catching on the dry bark before blooming into warmth. Max crept closer, nose twitching, then sat, watching the fire like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. Ryan found an old plaid blanket from the hall closet and spread it near the hearth. Max patted in a few circles, then curled up with a contented sigh. The sound made Ryan chuckle quietly. "That's better," he said. The house felt different already. He poured some water into a bowl, then found an unopened bag of dog food from a cabinet, leftover from when he and Laura had fostered strays. Max sniffed cautiously, then began to eat, tail thumping faintly. "You take your time," Ryan murmured, sitting on the floor nearby. "No rush anymore." As Max ate, Ryan leaned against the wall, letting the heat from the fire soak into his skin. His gaze drifted around the room. The books Laura had left half-read on the shelf, the blanket still folded on the couch, the faint dent in the cushion where she used to sit. For years, those things had felt like reminders of loss. Tonight, for some reason, they felt like pieces of a home waiting to breathe again. When Max finished eating, he trotted to Ryan's side, sniffing his knee, and laid his head on his thigh. Ryan looked down, smiling softly. "Guess you're not much for personal space?" The pup gave a small huff, already drifting toward sleep. Ryan stayed there for a long while, watching the fire crackle and the snow drift past the window. Eventually, his body grew heavy, exhaustion pulling him deeper into stillness. He leaned back in the recliner, half asleep, half awake. At some point, the line between dream and memory blurred. He saw Laura again, standing in the doorway of the living room, light from the fire behind her. She looked as she had before the accident, whole, radiant, calm. "You're finally home," she said softly. He swallowed hard, unable to answer. She stepped closer, eyes full of warmth. "Let someone need you again, Ryan. That's how you find your way back." Then she was gone. Ryan woke with a start. The fire burned low to amber coals. The room was still, except for the soft sound of Max's breathing near the hearth. He sat forward, rubbing his eyes, heart still heavy with the echo of her voice. The puppy shifted, whining in his sleep. Ryan reached down, pulled the blanket higher over him. "Yeah," he whispered, voice rough but gentle. "I hear you." He leaned back again, eyes tracing the flicker of light on the wall. The silence of the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt alive. For the first time in 3 years, Ryan didn't feel like a man trapped inside his own grief. He felt like someone beginning to wake. Outside, the snow started to fall again, soft and slow, wrapping Snowfield in quiet light. The morning after the dream lingered in Ryan's mind like the faint warmth of dying embers. Snowfield was wrapped again in silence, the kind that made even the smallest sound feel sacred. Ryan stood in his kitchen, pouring coffee into a chipped mug while Max slept by the fireplace, twitching occasionally in a dream of his own. The house felt different now, less hollow, more alive. Every creak of the wood floor, every sigh of the wind through the chimney, seemed to belong again. He glanced toward the window. The neighborhood across the narrow lane was quiet except for a few lazy curls of smoke from the chimneys. Kids were already on their way to school, backpacks bouncing, voices echoing through the thin air. Ryan watched absently, his mind wandering back to a time when he used to stand at another window, watching his wife leave for work, waving at him through the same glass pane. He hadn't realized how much he missed having someone to wave to. Then came a knock. It was light, tentative, 2 short taps, then silence. Ryan frowned, setting down his mug. Max's ears perked instantly, and a low bark slipped out, sharp and curious. The puppy trotted to the door, tail wagging. Ryan followed, pulling it open. Standing on the porch was a young boy, maybe 10 years old, bundled in an oversized parka that hung to his knees. His knit cap was crooked, a splash of red against his pale face, and snowflakes clung to his eyelashes. He looked up with a shy smile. "Hi, sir," the boy said. I heard a dog." Ryan blinked, the directness catching him off guard. "You heard right," he said, glancing down as Max peeked out from behind his leg, tail wagging cautiously. The boy's eyes lit up. "He's a German Shepherd, my favorite kind." Ryan's posture softened a little. "You like dogs?" The boy nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. Always wanted one. But my mom says not until she can work less." He hesitated before adding, "She works a lot." Ryan leaned against the doorframe studying him. The kid had kind eyes, hazel like autumn leaves, and a faint smear of chalk on his mitten, maybe from school. "What's your name, kid?" "Sam Parker," he said quickly. "We live next door. My mom's Lydia Parker. She works nights at the diner, sometimes at the grocery store, too." He looked down, scuffing his boots against the porch. "She's saving for her heart surgery." Ryan felt a subtle twist in his chest. That's a lot for a kid to carry. Sam shrugged with a brave little smile. "She says I'm her lucky charm, so I try to help where I can." Ryan nodded slowly, something in the boy's resilience reminding him of himself at that age, before life had taught him how loss felt. "You want to meet him?" Sam's eyes widened. "Can I?" Ryan stepped aside and waved him in. "Come on, he doesn't bite, at least not yet." The boy stepped into the warmth, boots squeaking on the floor, the house's cozy glow seemed to swallow him whole. Max trotted forward immediately, sniffing at the new visitor, tail wagging faster now. Sam crouched down, laughing softly as Max licked his mitten-covered fingers. "He likes you already," Ryan said, leaning against the wall. "What's his name?" "Max." Sam smiled, rubbing the puppy's ear. "Hi, Max. You're amazing." Ryan watched quietly, coffee forgotten on the counter. There was something about the way Sam's laughter filled the house that loosened the old ache in his chest. It was the first time in years he'd heard genuine laughter echo off these walls. "You live close?" Ryan asked, breaking the moment gently. Sam nodded, still petting Max. "Right next door. The house with the blue mailbox. I can see your porch light from my window at night." "Guess that makes us neighbors," Ryan said, smiling faintly. The boy's face brightened. "Can I come see Max sometimes? After school, maybe? I promise I'll help take care of him. I can even feed him if you want." Ryan hesitated for a second, glancing toward the dog who was now sprawled across the boy's lap, eyes closed in bliss. It wasn't a difficult decision. "Sure," he said finally. "After school's fine, but homework first, got it?" Sam grinned. "Yes, sir," Ryan chuckled. "And don't call me sir. Makes me feel older than I am." "Yes, Officer Ryan?" "Just Ryan," he corrected, shaking his head. "Only the bad guys call me officer." The boy laughed again, the sound carrying warmth like sunlight through frost. They spent the next hour talking. Sam told the stories about school, about the art teacher who let him draw superheroes when he finished early, and about the neighbor who fed stray cats behind the store. Ryan listened, offering quiet nods and the occasional smile, surprised by how easily the kid spoke around him. When Sam started yawning, Ryan knew it was time to send him home. "You should get going," he said gently. "Your mom'll worry." "She won't," Sam said quickly, then softened. "But okay." As they walked to the door, Ryan stopped and pointed to Max, who was sitting patiently near the hearth. "Before you go, want to learn something?" Sam turned, eyes bright. "What?" "Let's see if you can teach him his first command." Ryan crouched down beside Max. "All right, rookie," he said to the puppy. "Watch." He raised a finger. "Sit." To Sam's amazement, Max dropped instantly onto his haunches, ears perked, eyes expectant. Sam's jaw dropped. "He's so smart." Ryan grinned. "Now you try." Sam mimicked the gesture awkwardly. "Sit," he said, voice cracking a little. Max tilted his head and then sat again. Sam let out a delighted laugh, clapping his hands. "He did it! He actually did it!" "German Shepherds," Ryan said with a small smile. "They're sharp. You treat them right, they'll do anything for you." Sam crouched and scratched Max under the chin. "You're gonna be a hero dog, huh, Max?" Ryan watched the two of them, and for a moment he saw not just a kid and a puppy but something larger. Two innocent souls still believing the world could be good. Something in that sight eased him, like a wound quietly healing from the inside. As Sam headed for the door, Ryan handed him one of Laura's old scarves, a soft plaid one she used to wear during winters. "Here," he said. "It's cold out." Sam hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yeah. I think she'd want it keeping someone warm." Sam took it gently, eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Ryan. I'll bring it back." "No rush," Ryan said. "See you after school tomorrow?" "You bet," the boy said, pulling his hat down over his ears before running off into the snow, scarf trailing behind him. Ryan stood in the doorway for a while, watching the small figure vanish into the pale light. Behind him, Max barked once, as if approving. "Yeah, I know," Ryan said, closing the door. "He's a good kid." He knelt beside Max, scratching the dog's head. "You made a friend today, buddy. Maybe two." The fire crackled softly, casting dancing light across the walls. For the first time, Ryan felt the rhythm of something returning to his life: routine, warmth, laughter. The sound of small footsteps running through the snow had left a trail not just outside, but somewhere deep inside him, too. Tomorrow, he thought, there'd be more knocking at the door, and maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. The next morning came gray and brittle, the kind of cold that bit through even the thickest coat. Ryan woke early, his thoughts still circling the mystery of how Max ended up at that bus stop. He watched the puppy sleeping by the fire, one ear twitching in a dream, and he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, maybe a child, had cared enough to leave him there, hoping someone would find him. He needed to know who that someone was. After a quick breakfast and a glance at the photo of Laura on the wall, Ryan buttoned his heavy winter uniform and slipped on his gloves. Max stirred as the front door opened, tail wagging faintly. "You stay here, buddy," Ryan said gently. "I'll be back before you miss me." Outside, the air stung his lungs with every breath. The snow had crusted overnight, and his boots crunched across it as he walked toward the Maple bus stop. The same lonely corner where the cardboard box had once sat beneath the flickering streetlight. Morning traffic passed slowly, tires hissing on slush, but the bus stop itself was empty now, only a few frozen footprints marking the snow. Ryan crouched near the pole scanning the ground. There were faint impressions, small, uneven tracks leading away from where the box had been. They weren't adult-sized. They were lighter, shorter, staggered slightly as if made by someone nervous or hurrying. He followed them carefully, down the curb, across the narrow street, and into the narrow alley behind an old laundromat. The alley was quiet except for the hum of a distant vent. The track stopped near a chain-link fence, half buried beneath drifting snow. Ryan stared for a moment, imagining a child standing there in the dark, clutching the box, deciding to let go. He exhaled slowly. "A kid did this," he murmured. He took a few photos of the tracks with his phone, then returned to the patrol SUV parked nearby. His next stop was clear. At the Snowfield Veterinary Clinic, the same bell chimed as he stepped inside, shaking off the cold. Maya Jensen was there, tying her hair back as she cleaned a counter. Today, she wore a cream sweater beneath her coat, simple jeans, and snow boots, her cheeks flushed from the heater. She looked up, surprised. "You again? Don't tell me Max chewed something already." "Not yet," Ryan said, brushing snow from his shoulders. "I actually came to ask a favor." Her brows lifted slightly. "A favor?" "I'm trying to figure out who left Max at the bus stop. I went back this morning. Found footprints. Small ones, like a kid's. Figured maybe we could check the security camera from the gas station across the street. You think we can access it from here?" Maya hesitated, then nodded toward her office. "There's a municipal feed I can use. I help Animal Control check lost pet reports sometimes. Might work." Ryan followed her inside. The office was small but tidy, shelves lined with medical books, a photo of Maya's father, the wall, and a steaming mug of tea half-finished beside her computer. She sat down, her fingers moving deftly across the keyboard as she pulled up the town's shared security system. The footage loaded slowly, flickering from one grainy frame to another. Maya adjusted the timestamp, scrolling back to 1:00 a.m., the time Ryan had found Max. The street appeared under the dull glow of the sodium lamps, empty, silent, snow swirling through the beam of the bus stoplight. Then, movement. A small figure emerged from the corner of the frame, trudging through the snow. The person was slender, maybe 4.5 feet tall, wearing a thick red beanie and a puffy jacket 2 sizes too big. In their hands was a cardboard box. The figure hesitated beneath the bus stop light, set the box down gently, and knelt beside it. They stayed like that for several seconds, long enough to stroke the top of the box once, like a farewell, before running off into the darkness. Maya's hand stilled on the mouse. "That's not an adult," she said quietly. "No," Ryan replied, leaning closer. "That's a kid." They watched the clip again, the silence between them heavier than the soundless snow on the screen. When it ended, Maya turned off the monitor. "Do you think the kid owned him?" Ryan nodded slowly. "I think so, and whoever they are, they didn't abandon Max out of cruelty. They wanted him to be found." Maya leaned back, folding her arms. "That's rare." "What is?" Ryan asked. "Kindness that doesn't expect anything in return," she said, eyes unfocused. "You don't see much of it anymore." He glanced at her, noting the subtle change in her tone, softer now, almost wistful. "You sound like someone who stopped looking for it." She gave a small, ironic laugh. "I used to believe in people. When I was younger, I thought every good act came from a good heart. But then you see what happens behind the curtain, how easily people give up, how selfish they can be. It's easier not to expect much." Ryan said nothing at first. The firelight from the small electric heater flickered across her face, catching the faint weariness in her eyes. "You know," he said finally, "I used to feel that way too. Losing Laura, it made me stop trusting that anything good could last." Maya turned slightly toward him, the usual wall in her expression faltering. "What changed?" He looked toward the window, where snow still fell in soft sheets. "A puppy, in a box, I guess." For a long moment, neither spoke. The heater hummed, the world outside muffled by the steady fall of snow. Finally, Maya said quietly, "You make it sound like second chances are simple." "They never are," Ryan replied, "but they're still worth taking." Maya gave a faint, almost reluctant smile. "Maybe." Her gaze softened as she looked back at the paused image of the small figure on the screen. "You really think we can find them?" Ryan nodded. "We'll try. If the kid lives nearby, someone's seen them before." He stood, pulling on his gloves again. "Thanks, Doc, for the access." "You're welcome," she said, standing too. "And Officer Cole?" "Yeah?" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I think you're the first person in a long time to make me believe that maybe good still finds its way back." Ryan's eyes met hers, steady and kind. "It does, just not always the way we expect." She looked down, embarrassed by her own vulnerability, and smiled faintly. "Well, good luck out there. Try not to get frostbite playing detective." He chuckled. "No promises." As he stepped outside, the cold wind hit again, crisp and clean. The sky had cleared slightly, revealing the pale blue of afternoon. Ryan looked down the street toward the alley where he'd seen the footprints earlier. Somewhere out there was a scared kid who'd done something brave. He glanced back through the clinic window and caught a glimpse of Maya watching him from inside, her arms crossed but her expression softer than before. He gave a small nod before turning toward his SUV. Snow crunched beneath his boots, each step a steady echo in the quiet town. He didn't know who the child was yet, but he knew this wasn't the end of their story. The following afternoon, the snow in Snowfield turned from soft white to a grayish slush that clung to boots and tires alike. Ryan sat in his SUV parked near the bus stop, the heater humming softly, watching the world through the fogging windshield. He had printed out still images from the security footage, grainy frames showing the small figure in the red beanie carrying the cardboard box. It wasn't much, but it was something. He had shown the photo around town that morning. The diner, the gas station, the post office. Most shook their heads. A few thought they might have seen a kid like that near the outskirts, around the Maple Hollow Trailer Park, a patchwork neighborhood of rusted trailers and broken fences on the south side of Snowfield. Now, as the daylight began to fade, Ryan turned the wheel and headed that way. The roads grew narrower. Snow piled high on either side, tire tracks frozen into hard ridges. The trailer park appeared through a haze of smoke from wood stoves. Rows of metal homes dented and patched with plywood, their windows glowing dimly behind frost. Children's toys half buried in snow lined the path. A plastic tricycle, a deflated ball, a broken sled. It wasn't much, but it was home for someone. Ryan parked near the first row and got out, boots crunching through the icy ground. Max sat in the passenger seat, watching through the glass, ears perked but calm. Ryan gave him a reassuring glance before heading toward the small office shack at the entrance. A middle-aged woman stepped out just as he approached. She wore a thick flannel coat, her breath clouding in the cold. "You lost, officer?" she asked, wary but polite. "Not exactly," Ryan said, pulling a photo from his coat. "You recognize this kid? Red hat, maybe 14. The woman squinted. "Looks like Ethan Marsh. Lives 2 rows down, 3rd trailer on the left. His old man's trouble. Drinks too much, shouts a lot. Kid mostly keeps to himself." Ryan nodded, tucking the photo back. "Thanks." The woman gave a faint, sad smile. "He's a good boy, though. Just had bad luck with family." Ryan thanked her again and followed the snow-packed path. The sky had gone overcast again, pale light fading fast. He could hear faint arguing from one of the trailers, a man's angry voice, muffled but sharp. He passed quickly until he reached the 3rd one on the left, a faded blue trailer with a bent antenna and an old Christmas wreath still hanging on the door. He knocked once. No answer. He tried again, louder this time. After a moment, the door opened just an inch. A thin boy peeked out, his red beanie still on despite being indoors. His face was pale, freckled, with sharp eyes that darted between Ryan's uniform and the badge on his chest. "Ethan?" Ryan asked softly. The boy hesitated. "Yeah? I just want to talk. About a dog." At that, Ethan's grip on the door tightened, knuckles whitening. "I don't know what you mean." Ryan's tone stayed calm, gentle. "You do. The one you left at the bus stop." For a second, the boy's expression crumbled, guilt flickering across his face like a shadow. He opened the door a little wider, revealing a cluttered room behind him, peeling wallpaper, a broken heater humming weakly, a single cot covered in thin blankets. Ethan stepped aside. "Come in, but keep your voice down. My dad's working a double shift." Ryan entered, careful not to track too much snow inside. The air smelled faintly of cigarettes and cold metal. Ethan stood by the small table, arms crossed over his chest as if bracing for scolding. "You're not in trouble," Ryan said quietly. "I just want to understand." The boy's lips trembled before he spoke. He's mine. Max, well, Buddy, that's his name. He was my dog since he was a puppy." He swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the floor. "My dad used to like him too. But when Mom left, everything got worse. He started drinking more. One night, Buddy barked when Dad threw something at me. Dad, he hit him. Hard." Ryan's chest tightened, but he let the boy speak. "I tried to stop him, but Dad kicked Buddy outside in the snow, said if I brought him back, he'd sell him to the pound. So I waited till he passed out, and I took Buddy. I didn't know where else to go." His voice cracked now, tears glinting in his lashes. "It was freezing. I walked all the way to the bus stop, thinking someone would find him and be kind. I couldn't keep him, but I couldn't let him die there either." The silence that followed was heavy. Outside, the wind rattled the thin trailer walls like the world itself was holding its breath. Ryan crouched slightly, meeting the boy's eyes. "Ethan," he said gently, "you did something brave. You did what grown men sometimes can't. You protected someone weaker than you." Ethan sniffed, rubbing his sleeve across his face. "You're not mad?" Ryan shook his head. "Mad? No. You did what you had to do." The boy stared at him, uncertain, as if waiting for the part where the adult tells him he was wrong, but it never came. Instead, Ryan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something wrapped in a cloth. He unfolded it carefully, a small leather collar, worn but intact, with the name Buddy engraved on a metal tag. "I found this near the box that night," Ryan said. "Thought you might want it back." Ethan took it with trembling hands. "You still have it?" His voice broke. "I thought it got lost." Ryan smiled faintly. "Nothing that important ever really gets lost." Ethan stared at the collar for a long time before whispering, "Can I see him? Is he okay?" Ryan nodded. "He's more than okay. He's healthy, warm, and got a knack for making friends." A tear rolled down Ethan's cheek. "Good. He deserves that." Ryan hesitated for a moment, then placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You know, there's something you should hear from someone who means it." Ethan looked up. "You did the right thing, kid. You did what an adult should have done. You protected someone who couldn't protect himself. That makes you better than most men I know." The boy blinked hard, biting his lip. "Thanks, Officer Cole." Ryan stood, straightening his jacket. "Just Ryan," he said. "And maybe sometime you can come visit Buddy. I think he'd like that." Ethan's face lit up for the first time, a shy but real smile spreading across it. "Really?" "Really," Ryan said. "He misses you. I can tell." As Ryan turned to leave, Ethan called after him. "Officer, Ryan." Ryan looked back. "Tell him I'm sorry for leaving him." Ryan's throat tightened, but he nodded. "I think he already knows." Outside, the wind had calmed, and the first stars blinked faintly through the thinning clouds. Ryan walked back toward his SUV, the sound of snow crunching underfoot echoing through the quiet park. Max barked once as he opened the door, tail thumping eagerly. Ryan smiled and slipped into the driver's seat. He reached into his pocket, feeling the faint weight of the collar Ethan had returned, its metal tag cold against his palm. "Buddy." He looked at Max, now resting his head on Ryan's arm, and whispered, "You had a good kid, didn't you?" Max's ears perked, as if understanding. Ryan started the engine, headlights cutting through the dark. As he pulled away from the trailer park, he caught a glimpse of a small figure standing at the window, the red beanie still glowing faintly in the dusk. And for the first time that night, Ryan felt like something lost had quietly found its way home. Saturday morning arrived with a fragile light that spilled across Snowfield like a promise. The storm had finally passed, leaving behind a sky so clean it almost hurt to look at. The streets shimmered under a thin crust of ice, and the bare trees stood tall and crystalline in the cold. For once, the town didn't feel tired. It felt alive. Ryan stood beside his SUV in Snowfield Park, zipping his Navy patrol jacket as he breathed in the sharp winter air. Behind him, Max barked impatiently from the open back seat, his breath puffing in small clouds. The park was quiet at this hour, except for the distant laughter of children sledding down the hill. The wide meadow near the frozen pond was almost empty, save for a few joggers and the faint sound of a church bell echoing across town. Today was the day. Ryan looked down the path where the trees met the road. His thoughts drifted back to that night at the trailer park, to the boy with the red hat and trembling hands clutching his dog's old collar like it was the last thing in the world that still made sense. Ryan had promised Ethan a reunion. He meant to keep that promise. A few minutes later, a small figure appeared at the curve of the trail. Ethan Marsh, bundled in a second-hand parka and that same red beanie, trudged toward the clearing. He looked smaller than Ryan remembered, his boots too big, the laces unevenly tied, but his eyes, hopeful, uncertain, were unmistakable. When Ethan reached him, he stopped a few feet away, glancing nervously at Max, who was standing by the door, tail wagging furiously. Ryan smiled. "He's been waiting for you." Ethan swallowed, his breath visible in the cold. "Does he remember me? Why don't you find out?" Ryan opened the back door. The sound of it was like a spark. Max leapt out instantly, paws crunching into the snow, and for a split second, the world went silent. Then, recognition. The German shepherd froze, head tilting as he stared at the boy, nose twitching. Ethan dropped to his knees, eyes wide, hands trembling in his mittens. "Buddy?" he whispered. That was all it took. Max bolted forward, bounding across the snow and crashing into the boy's arms. The bark that burst from him was half joy, half disbelief. He licked Ethan's face, pressed his body against him, tail wagging so hard it sent powder flying. Ethan laughed through tears, hugging the dog tightly. "Oh my God, Buddy," he gasped, voice breaking. "You remember me. You really remember." Ryan stood back, his chest tightening in the best way. There were no words that fit moments like this, just the sight of a boy and his dog finding each other again, and the quiet sense that something broken had just mended. Max rested his head on Ethan's shoulder, eyes half closed, making a sound that was almost a sigh. Ethan laughed again, wiping his face with his sleeve. "Thank you," he said between breaths. "Thank you, Officer Ryan. I didn't think I'd ever see him again." Ryan knelt down beside them, smiling softly. "You two deserved this. He's been through enough. So have you." Ethan nodded, burying his face in Max's fur. "He was the only thing that ever felt safe. I missed him every day." The boy stayed like that for a long moment, the world narrowing to the sound of breathing, wind, and the heartbeat pressed against his cheek. Ryan let him have it. No rush, no clock, no rules, just time, the kind you don't realize you need until you finally get it back. Eventually, Ethan looked up, cheeks flushed red from the cold and emotion. "Can I visit him? Maybe every weekend? I could help take care of him. Walk him, feed him, whatever you need." Ryan's answer came without hesitation. "Every weekend, after your homework's done. Deal?" Ethan grinned through his tears. "Deal." Max barked once as if to seal the agreement. Ryan chuckled, scratching behind the dog's ear. "Guess it's official." As they stood, footsteps crunched on the snow behind them. Ryan turned to see Dr. Maya Jensen approaching, bundled in a dark green coat and knit scarf, her cheeks pink from the cold. She carried a thermos in one hand and waved slightly when Ryan met her eye. Didn't think you were the park type, Doc, Ryan teased as she neared. Maya smirked. I was on my way to the clinic when I saw your SUV. Curiosity won. Her gaze shifted to Ethan and Max, who were still playing in the snow. Ethan tossing a small stick, Max chasing it with wild joy. The sight seemed to still her. She exhaled softly. That's him, isn't it? The boy from the footage. Yeah, Ryan said quietly. Ethan Marsh, 14, rough home life. He's the one who left Max at the bus stop. Maya nodded slowly. He did the right thing. He did, Ryan agreed, even if it broke his heart. For a long time, neither spoke. The boy's laughter carried on the wind, mingling with the barking of the dog. Maya's eyes followed them, her expression softening in a way Ryan hadn't seen before. You know, she said finally, watching them, it reminds me why I became a vet. I used to think saving animals would be simple. Patch them up, send them home. But it's not just about that, is it? It's about the people who need saving too. Ryan turned toward her, his breath fogging in the air. That's closer to the truth than you think. She smiled faintly, then took a sip from her thermos before saying, I've been thinking about something since the other day. We could do more with stories like this, kids like Ethan, animals like Max. He raised a brow. Go on. I've been wanting to start an animal-assisted therapy program, she explained, for children dealing with trauma, loss, or abuse. But I don't have the outreach or resources to connect with them. You do. You work with the schools, the department, the families. Ryan looked at her for a moment, surprised. You're asking me to partner with you? Her tone softened. I'm asking you to help make something good out of all this. Maybe we can remind people that kindness still exists. Ryan chuckled quietly. You're starting to sound like me now. Don't get used to it, she replied with a playful smirk, but her eyes told a different story, one of trust, hope, and the quiet acknowledgement of how far both of them had come. Ryan nodded slowly. All right, Doc, let's do it. Good, she said, smiling more fully now. I'll drop the proposal. You just keep being the guy who stops for things everyone else drives past. He laughed under his breath. Deal. They both turned to watch Ethan and Max again. The boy had slipped on the ice, falling into a snowbank with a startled yelp, and Max immediately bounded over, barking as if scolding him. Ethan laughed so hard he couldn't breathe. Maya leaned closer, whispering just above the wind. You know, Officer Cole, I think that dog's not the only one who's been rescued. Ryan looked at her, then back at the boy and the dog, their joy unfiltered, their trust absolute, and felt something in his chest loosen again. Yeah, he said quietly, maybe none of us are. They stood there for a while longer, the winter sun climbing slowly behind the trees, melting the last of the frost on the bench where they stood. For the first time in years, Ryan didn't feel like a man looking back. He felt like someone finally looking forward. The following weeks brought small miracles to Snowfield, the kind that didn't make headlines but changed lives all the same. The town thawed a little earlier that year, as if spring had decided to arrive just to watch what Ryan, Maya, and Max were building. Inside the Snowfield Veterinary Clinic, things were different now. What had once been a quiet place for emergencies and checkups had turned into something more, a space filled with laughter, stories, and the muffled patter of small feet on tile floors. The clinic had begun hosting weekend visits for children referred by the local school counselor, kids who had faced grief, fear, or loneliness too early in life. Max had become the heart of it all. On Saturday mornings, Ryan would drive him over in the patrol SUV, the windows cracked open so the wind could ruffle his fur. Maya would be waiting at the door, wearing her olive green coat and that same calm smile that had become easier to find these days. She'd nod at Ryan, then kneel to greet Max, rubbing his head. "Ready for work, officer?" she'd tease, and Max would bark softly in response. That morning, the clinic was filled with the sound of quiet chatter. 3 children sat in a circle on the soft rug of the waiting area, crayons scattered around as they drew pictures of animals. Sam Parker, now a regular visitor, sat among them. His face was still boyish, but thinner than usual, shadows under his eyes betraying sleepless nights. Ryan noticed immediately. He'd seen that look before, worry that lived too deep for a child to carry. He crouched beside Sam, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Hey, champ," he said. "Haven't seen that smile in a while." Sam looked up, trying to muster one. "I'm okay," he said softly, but his voice cracked halfway through. Maya walked over from the reception desk, concern knitting her brow. "Sam, where's your mom today?" The boy hesitated. "She's at the hospital. She had another—" Episode. His lip trembled, and the crayon rolled from his hand. The doctor said her heart's worse. They're keeping her there for tests. A silence settled over the room. Ryan exchanged a glance with Maya, who gave a subtle nod. He didn't need to say anything. Max had already noticed. The dog, lying near the corner, lifted his head, ears pricking at the change in the boy's voice. Sam tried to wipe his eyes with his sleeve, whispering, "She said she'll be fine, but she looks so tired. I don't know what to do." Before Ryan or Maya could move, Max stood. Slowly, he padded across the floor, nails clicking softly against the tile. He approached Sam without hesitation, lowering his head and pressing his muzzle gently against the boy's knee. Then, as if sensing exactly what was needed, Max climbed closer and rested his head fully in Sam's lap. Sam froze. Then, wordlessly, his small hands reached out, fingers sinking into the dog's thick fur. The moment he did, his shoulders began to shake, the dam finally breaking. "I just don't want her to die," he whispered, voice muffled by tears. Max didn't move. He didn't bark, or lick, or tilt his head the way most dogs did. He simply stayed there, breathing softly, weight steady and warm against the boy's trembling hands. Ryan swallowed hard. He'd seen Max brave storms, rescue fear, heal wounds, but this was different. This was something that couldn't be taught. Sam's sobs slowly quieted until the only sound left was the soft rhythm of Max's breathing. The boy wiped his eyes again, voice steadier now. He knew I was sad." Maya crouched beside them, her eyes glistening. "He always knows," she said gently. "That's his gift." Sam nodded, burying his face in Max's fur once more. "He makes it easier to breathe." Ryan looked away for a moment, pretending to adjust his collar. He didn't trust his voice not to break. Later that afternoon, after the children had gone and the clinic had returned to its familiar quiet, Ryan and Maya sat together by the front desk. Max lay nearby, curled up, head resting on his paws, the sunlight from the window pooling across his coat. "He's something else," Maya said softly, her gaze fixed on the dog. Ryan smiled faintly. "He's been through hell and somehow came out of it kinder." Maya turned toward him, her eyes thoughtful. "You both did." He blinked. "What do you mean?" She folded her hands together. "When I first met you, I saw a man running from ghosts. You helped that dog heal, and in return he helped you do the same. That's not chance. That's grace." Ryan looked at her, unsure how to respond. The words hung between them, warm and unguarded. Maya continued, her tone gentle. "You know, sometimes I think souls like yours and his, souls that have been broken but kept going, they're the ones who remind the rest of us that healing is still possible." She smiled faintly. "Maybe you and Max are both. Souls that got rescued." Ryan chuckled softly, though his eyes were damp. "You've gotten poetic, Doc." "Occupational hazard," she said with a smirk. "Spend enough time watching creatures survive and you start to believe in miracles again." He leaned back, exhaling. "Yeah. Maybe that's what this all is. A second chance I didn't know I was getting." Maya tilted her head. "You think Laura would be proud?" Ryan looked toward the window, the sunlight catching the gold badge on his chest. He thought of Laura's voice in his dream, the way she'd said, "Let someone need you again." He smiled, slow and certain. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think she already is." Maya's gaze softened. "Then maybe it's time you let life back in, Ryan." Before he could answer, Max stirred, stretching with a soft grunt before padding over to them. He nudged Ryan's knee, tail wagging. Ryan laughed, reaching down to ruffle his fur. "You heard her, huh? Guess that's your cue." Maya grinned. "He agrees with me. Smart dog." "Too smart sometimes," Ryan said. For a moment, all three sat in easy silence. The sound of the heater hummed low, mingling with the faint rustle of snow melting outside. It wasn't the kind of silence that felt empty anymore. It was the kind that felt earned. Later, as Ryan and Max left the clinic, the sun was already dipping behind the pine trees, painting the world gold. He paused by the door, glancing back at Maya through the glass. She waved once, a quiet smile playing on her lips. Ryan raised a hand in return, then turned toward the street. Max walked beside him, tail swaying, paws leaving a trail of prints on the thawing snow. For the first time in a long time, Ryan realized that home wasn't just a place. It was a heartbeat, a companion, a small act of kindness that rippled outward. And as Max looked up at him, eyes warm and steady, Ryan knew one thing for certain. They hadn't just saved each other. Together, they'd begun saving the world around them, one soul at a time. The storm came without warning, sweeping over Snowfield like a living thing. By sunset, the wind howled through the pine trees and snow fell in thick, merciless sheets that swallowed the roads and erased the world beyond a few feet of light. Ryan was at the station when the call came through, a panicked voice over the radio reporting that Sam Parker, the boy who often visited the clinic, had gone missing. The officer on dispatch, a young deputy named Lena Torres, 28, Latina, with her dark hair tied tightly under her patrol cap, briefed him quickly. His mom was admitted to county hospital earlier. The nurse said Sam never showed up. His neighbor saw him leave on foot around 6 before the blizzard started. Ryan's jaw tightened. He was trying to walk to the hospital in this weather? Looks like it. Get the rescue unit ready, Ryan ordered, grabbing his coat and keys. I'm taking Max. The drive through the storm was brutal. Snow battered the windshield like shards of glass, and even the high beams only reached a few feet ahead. The heater barely kept up, the cabin filled with the sound of the wind's rage. Beside him, Max sat alert in the passenger seat, ears perked, eyes fixed on the swirling white beyond the glass. When they reached the last intersection before the main road split toward the forest trail, Ryan stopped the SUV. "All right, partner," he said, pulling on his gloves. "This is where we start." He stepped out, instantly swallowed by the wind. The world had turned ghostly white, the kind of silence that hummed just before a storm's roar. Max jumped down beside him, fur whipping in the wind, nose twitching as he scanned the air. "Find him," Ryan said, his voice almost lost in the storm. "Find Sam." Max lowered his head, sniffing the snow. Then he started moving, steady and sure, leading Ryan through the drifts. They passed the edge of town, where the streetlights faded and the forest began, a maze of dark trunks and snow-laden branches. Ryan kept close, flashlight cutting a narrow path of gold through the blinding white. Minutes stretched into an hour. The snow deepened, reaching Ryan's knees. He called Sam's name, voice carried away by the wind. "Sam, it's Officer Cole. Answer me." Nothing but the storm's fury. Max suddenly stopped, tail stiff, ears forward. He sniffed the ground, circled once, then gave a sharp bark. Ryan crouched beside him, spotting small indentations, footprints half filled with snow. He felt a surge of adrenaline. "Good boy, Max, lead the way." They followed the trail through a narrow grove, branches whipping Ryan's face. His breath came in harsh clouds. The footprints veered downhill toward a shallow ravine. Halfway down, Max barked again, this time louder, urgent. Ryan stumbled after him, nearly slipping on the ice. Then he saw it, a small shape half buried in snow near the base of a tree, a red hat barely visible, under the white. "Sam!" Ryan shouted, rushing forward. He dropped to his knees, brushing snow away from the boy's face. Sam's lips were pale, his eyes closed, his body trembling faintly. Ryan's heart pounded. "Hey, kid, stay with me." He pulled off his glove and pressed 2 fingers against Sam's neck. Faint pulse, but there. He stripped off his outer coat and wrapped it around the boy, pulling him close. Max whined, circling them before lying down beside Sam, pressing his body against the boy's side to share warmth. His thick fur became a living blanket. Ryan tucked the coat tighter, shielding them both from the wind. "Good boy," he whispered, voice shaking. "Keep him warm, Max." He grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Cole. I found him, east side of Pine Ridge near the ravine. He's alive but hypothermic. We need rescue now." Static answered first, then Lena's voice broke through. "Copy that, Officer Cole. Rescue team's en route, 10 minutes out. Hang in there." 10 minutes. In a blizzard, that might as well be forever. Ryan held Sam close, his arms wrapped around both boy and dog. Snow gathered on his shoulders, on Max's fur, on Sam's boots. He could feel the boy's heartbeat, slow but steady. Max never moved, never flinched, just stayed pressed against Sam like he understood exactly what was happening. "Come on, buddy," Ryan murmured. "You're going to see your mom again. You hear me?" The boy stirred weakly, lips parting. "Buddy?" he whispered faintly. Ryan smiled through the cold. "Yeah, he's here. He's right here with you." Sam's fingers twitched, brushing against Max's fur. The dog leaned closer, nose nuzzling the boy's chin. For a few minutes the storm seemed to ease. The wind softened, the world narrowing to the rhythm of 3 heartbeats, one fragile, one steady, and one wild and loyal. The sound of an approaching engine broke through the quiet. Headlights flickered between the trees, the rescue team's vehicle cutting through the snow. Ryan stood, waving an arm. "Over here!" 2 paramedics rushed down the hill. One of them, Harold Green, a man in his 50s with a weathered face and kind eyes, helped lift Sam into the stretcher. "He's lucky you found him," Harold said. "Another hour, and—" He didn't finish the sentence. Ryan exhaled, finally allowing the tremor in his hands. "It wasn't me," he said, glancing at Max, who stood nearby, fur covered in frost, tail wagging faintly. He led the way. Back in the SUV, after the rescue team drove off with Sam, Ryan sat for a long moment, the defroster humming. Max rested his head on his lap, eyes half closed. Ryan stroked his fur, feeling the warmth return to his fingers. "You did good, partner," he said softly. "Real good." Max gave a small, tired whine in response. The next morning, Snowfield woke to a headline splashed across the front page of the Snowfield Gazette, K9, Puppy Saves Boy in Snowstorm. A photo beneath it showed Ryan kneeling beside Max, both of them dusted with snow, rescue lights flashing behind. The town that had once seen Max as just another stray now called him a hero. Ryan folded the paper carefully, smiling to himself. He reached down to scratch behind Max's ear. "Looks like you're famous now, buddy." Max barked softly, then leaned into his hand, eyes warm as ever. Ryan looked out the window at the freshly fallen snow, sunlight spilling across it like redemption. For the first time in a long time, he felt something pure and steady, a quiet pride that came not from medals or uniforms, but from knowing that hope sometimes had 4 legs and a heartbeat. Snowfield changed with the season. The last snow melted into silver puddles that reflected the rising sun, and the wind carried the scent of thawed earth and pine. For months, the town had carried the memory of that storm and the hero who had walked through it, a German shepherd with eyes full of quiet light. Now, as spring arrived, the story was still whispered in grocery lines, schoolyards, and church steps. Max had become more than a dog. He was a symbol of hope, loyalty, and the belief that even in the coldest winter, kindness survives. The Snowfield Park was alive that afternoon. The mayor, Harold Bennett, a stout man in his 60s with gray hair and a kind, booming voice, stood on a small wooden stage. He wore his usual tweed overcoat and red scarf, the same one he'd worn for years, now fluttering lightly in the breeze. Behind him hung a banner that read, "Community Recognition Day, celebrating acts of courage." Ryan stood near the front row, dressed not in his uniform, but in a dark blue sweater and jeans. It felt strange to be out of his patrol jacket, but today wasn't about the badge. Beside him sat Maya Jensen, in a light beige coat and brown boots, her dark hair loose for once. Her expression was calm, yet bright, the kind of peace that had taken months to earn. And at Ryan's feet sat Max, now a little older, his coat glossier, his demeanor steady and proud. Around his neck hung a blue collar with a new silver tag that gleamed in the sunlight, engraved with the words, "Max, Therapy Dog, Snowfield." The mayor raised his hand for silence. "Today," he began, his voice carrying warmly through the park, "we gather not just to honor bravery, but to celebrate compassion, the kind that saves lives and reminds us who we are." He gestured toward Ryan and Max. When a child went missing during the storm, this officer and his 4-legged partner risked their lives to bring him home. But their story didn't end there. Since that day, Max has comforted dozens of children through the town's therapy program, showing that healing isn't just about medicine, it's about connection. The crowd clapped, the sound blending with the rustle of trees. Sam sat on the grass with his mother, who had finally recovered after her hospital stay. She smiled faintly, a hand over her heart, watching the dog who had once calmed her son through his darkest days. Ethan stood near the front too, taller now, the red beanie still on his head though the weather no longer called for it. His face glowed with quiet pride. The mayor continued, "For his courage and service, we name Max as Snowfield's official therapy dog ambassador." He reached for a small ribbon and draped it around Max's neck. The dog tilted his head, unsure of the attention, then wagged his tail, earning a wave of laughter from the crowd. Ryan smiled and crouched beside him, rubbing his fur. "You deserve it, buddy." After the ceremony, people lingered in the park, sunlight spreading warmth across the grass. Children approached to pet Max, their laughter ringing out like bells. Maya stood beside Ryan, watching. He handles fame better than most humans, she teased. Ryan chuckled. Yeah, he's humble about it. I could take lessons. Maya nudged him with her elbow. You already have. You just don't know it. They watched as Ethan approached, hands in his pockets. His once guarded eyes now carried light. Officer Ryan? He said softly. Ryan turned. Hey, Ethan. Glad you came. The boy smiled faintly. Wouldn't miss it. He found the right person. Ryan blinked. What do you mean? Ethan glanced down at Max, who looked up at him with calm affection. I thought I was saving him that night when I left him at the bus stop. But maybe he was meant to find you instead. Maybe he knew you needed saving too. Ryan didn't answer right away. His throat felt tight. He looked at Max. This dog who had walked into his life out of a snowstorm and somehow thawed everything frozen inside him. Then he looked back at Ethan. No, he said gently. He didn't just find me. He found all of us. Ethan smiled wider, and Maya, standing beside Ryan, reached down to pat Max's head. He connected us, she said softly. Later that evening, the sun dipped behind the pine ridge, turning the sky into gold and rose. The park had emptied, leaving behind only a few lingering families. Ryan, Maya, Sam, and Ethan sat together on the old wooden bench by the pond. The surface shimmered with the reflections of new leaves, and somewhere far off, birds sang their return. Sam leaned against his mother's side, a wide grin on his face. Max is a real hero now, he said proudly. Ryan smiled. He always was. The rest of us just needed to catch up. Ethan laughed, tossing a pebble into the water. I still think he deserves his own statue. Maya chuckled. I think he'd rather have a field to run in. That drew everyone's attention. She turned toward Ryan, a small, secretive smile forming. Speaking of fields, I've been meaning to tell you, the town council approved the grant. Ryan's brows lifted. The one for the Therapy Dog Foundation? She nodded. We're calling it Max's Promise Foundation, a rescue and rehabilitation center for dogs who can be trained for emotional therapy. You'll be co-founder, of course. For a moment, Ryan just stared at her. You serious? Completely. He looked at Max, then at the horizon. Then let's make it happen. They sat there for a while, letting the silence speak what words couldn't. The sky deepened to violet, and the first stars appeared above the ridge. Max rose suddenly, trotting toward the open field, his paws kicking up faint sprays of water where the snow had melted. The others watched as he ran, faster and faster, his figure cutting through the pale light, like a promise fulfilled. Ethan laughed softly. Guess he likes his new title. Ryan watched him go, a hand resting over his chest where the ache used to be. No, he said quietly, almost to himself. He just knows the world's finally warm again. Maya glanced at him, her voice barely above a whisper. Then maybe it's time we all start living like it. The wind carried the sound of Max's joyful bark across the meadow. It echoed off the trees, blending with the gentle rustle of spring leaves, a sound of life returning, of healing that refused to fade. Ryan rose, his gaze following the dog across the open field, where the last snow patches gleamed like scattered stars. Come on, he said, smiling faintly. Let's go home. And as Max turned back, running toward them, the fading light caught the blue ribbon on his neck, turning it into a streak of gold, like a medal made of sunlight, shining for every second chance the world had given. In the end, Max wasn't just a dog. He was a reminder that miracles still walk among us, sometimes on four legs, sometimes wrapped in fur and silence. When Ryan found him in that cold, forgotten box, neither of them knew they were about to change countless lives. But that's how God often works. Quietly, through the smallest acts of love, through the hearts of those who choose kindness over indifference. Max became more than a companion. He became a healer, a bridge between broken souls, and proof that redemption can come in the most unexpected form. Every gentle look, every saved life, every moment of comfort he gave was a whisper from heaven. A reminder that light can be found even in the darkest winter. May this story remind us all to open our hearts, to care, to believe that love still saves. Because sometimes God doesn't send angels with wings. He sends them with paws and warm eyes that see the good in us when we've forgotten it ourselves. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment and tell us what part moved you most. And if you believe that love and faith still create miracles, write Amen in the comments below. May God bless you, protect your loved ones, and fill your days with quiet miracles just like Max's. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, so together we can keep spreading stories of faith, kindness, and the power of second chances.